Hi again, everybody, and happy holidays. Welcome to the Big Blue Breakdown as we go over the three key matchups for the New York Giants in Sunday's home game against the Indianapolis Colts. Now, before we get to the state of these teams and we get to our matchups, it's important to note that on Saturday, the Chargers and the Broncos have games to play. If both of those teams win, the Colts are eliminated from the AFC playoff picture and will have nothing to play for when they kick it off against the Giants Sunday at 1 o'clock. There are a bunch of other permutations and combinations that could help the Colts should those two teams not come out with victories on Saturday. All right, let's get to it. The state of the Giants. Drew Lock injured his throwing shoulder, that's his right shoulder, against the Atlanta Falcons last weekend. He underwent an MRI earlier this week and was cleared to play. Head coach Brian Daboll said that he will start against the Colts. He would like Lock to get a second consecutive start, thinking that that might help in terms of the fluidity of the preparation and the continuity of the offense. So Lock gets to start his second straight game. Now, at the same time, it is important to realize that he is coming off what was definitely a difficult performance. In fact, Lock did not help himself at all in terms of his stature and value in the Atlanta game. He threw 2 interceptions that were taken back for touchdowns. One was a poor decision. The other one was a deflected pass that, quite frankly, bad luck just took over and it got taken back the other way. He also, on a hit, lost a fumble. So 3 turnovers committed by Lock did not help the Giants' cause as they were hammered by the Atlanta Falcons 34-7 on the road. Lock certainly hoping to come back and redeem himself and get that bad taste out of his mouth. So that's where it stands with him. Now, the Giants, you'll remember, after they came back from Germany in that loss to the Carolina Panthers, they've been going with either the combination of Lock or Tommy DeVito as the starting quarterback. Over that 5-game stretch, they scored 7 against Tampa Bay, 20 against Dallas, 11 against New Orleans, 14 against Baltimore, and only 7 against Atlanta. So the Giants' offense has not been doing themselves any favors over the last month plus of the season. At the same time, there's been an attrition on defense as injuries have continued to pile up and done an awful lot of damage to this team as they wind up falling from behind for big chunks of the game and then they cannot call out of it. Over that same 5-game span since the Carolina game in Germany, the Giants have allowed 30 points to Tampa, 27 to Dallas, 14 to New Orleans, 35 to Baltimore, and 34 to Atlanta. Yes, the Giants are limping and scuffling to the finish line, trying to avoid, for only the second time in their history, having a winless season at home. They did that back in 1974 in their second and final season at the Yale Bowl when they were 0-7. Teams played only 14 regular season games at the time. The Giants were still waiting for Yankee Stadium. They had moved out of Yankee Stadium. They were waiting for Giants Stadium to be built. Wound up playing at Shea 1 year in 75, and then actually got to the Meadowlands in 1976. So that's the kind of perspective we're looking at as the Giants go into this game against the Colts. They are reeling. Now, injury-wise, they've had several guys miss a host of practice this week, including Nabers, John Michael Schmitz, McFadden, Stroman, and Lane. Nabers, of course, is the biggest name there, battling a toe injury now in addition to a sore hip. He has tried to play through things as much as possible. It remains to be seen as they go into Friday's practice exactly what his status will be, but it is cloudy at best. John Michael Schmitz was seen in the locker room on Thursday afternoon wearing a boot on his injured foot. So one would have to think that he is unlikely to play. And Micah McFadden, again, their starting inside linebacker. Bobby Okereke is already on injury reserve. McFadden suffered a stinger in the game against Atlanta, and his status is certainly very cloudy. So those are three starters you're talking about for the Giants between offense and defense that in the last week are definitely in a hazy situation in terms of being able to play against the Colts. The Giants, a couple things I do want to make note of. They have actually done better in terms of cutting down on their missed tackles over the last month or so. Defensive coordinator Shane Bowen has talked about that. Giants, for much of the season, were in the top 3 of the NFL in most missed tackles. Now they are down to 8th with 103 on the season. That is actually manifested itself in some better rushing defense over the last few weeks. Although Bijan Robinson had over 90 yards for Atlanta last week, you'll recall that Derrick Henry and Alvin Kamara over the prior 2 weeks did not come nearly close to those numbers and were well under their regular season averages. So the Giants have been tackling better. Their outside linebackers have done a better job on the edge. Kayvon Thibodeau, of course, is back from his wrist surgery. And the Giants' corners have also done a better job in run support. So that's kind of where the Giants are as they prepare for this game with the Colts. There's no question that it's been a disappointing season, but the Giants, they've had a good attitude at practice. They're together, and everybody in that locker room has been talking about desperately getting a victory just to feel good, especially around the holidays. The Indianapolis Colts, as we look at the state of them, they are 7-8 on the season. They're scoring 21 a game and giving up 24 a game. I already told you about they lead the NFL in missed tackles. They're also in the bottom 4 defenses of the league in terms of blitz percentage on passing plays at only 18%. So they really do not they're not too aggressive, if you will, in going after the quarterback. They have 34 sacks this year. By comparison, the Giants have 41. But a couple of overall numbers about the Colts that are important to take a look at. They rank 21st in offensive red zone percentage, that is touchdown percentage when you get inside the 20, at only 55%. Defensively, their defense is ranked 20th in the league. They are allowing a 60% touchdown red zone percentage. Now, what is it about the Colts that even gives them a chance to be in the playoff hunt this late in the season? Well, it's their running game. They are 8th in the NFL at over 135 yards a game, primarily because of former Pro Bowl running back Jonathan Taylor, who has been absolutely incredible. 8th in the league at over 1,100 yards rushing, nearly 5 yards a carry, and tied for 3rd in the NFL with 8 rushing touchdowns. He's had 5 100-yard rushing games, and then on top of that, last week had the second 200-yard rushing game of his career, 29 carries for 218 and 3 touchdowns against the Tennessee Titans. Now, why is that a big deal? Well, Jonathan Taylor became the 9th player in NFL history last week to have 2 rushing touchdowns of at least 65 yards in the same game. Yeah, he could break them. Taylor has 6 rushes of at least 65 yards in his career, which is the most since he entered the NFL in 2020. Saquon Barkley had one such game of 2 of those kinds of touchdowns earlier this season against the Los Angeles Rams. That's the kind of back that we're talking about that the Giants are going to have to face. The Colts are 6-1 this year against teams below 500, but 1-7 against teams who are above 500. Doesn't take a genius to know where the Giants stand going into this game. The Colts will be playing the Jaguars next week, so if they can somehow stay alive this weekend, not only with losses by Denver and the Chargers, but then also a win over the Giants, they'll be playing Jacksonville next week. Even though they lost to Jacksonville earlier this season, you have to feel that they'd love to push their playoff possibilities to the final weekend of the regular season. Now, why do the Colts have such a dominant running game? Well, because they got a quarterback who runs a lot, Anthony Richardson. Nearly 500 yards rushing this year and almost 6 yards a carry with 6 rushing touchdowns. Last week against Tennessee, 9 carries for a career high, not a career high, but a season high, 70 yards and a touchdown. That's because he doesn't like to throw it very much. He doesn't have success all that often when he airs the ball out. On the season, he's only got 3 games of more than 200 yards passing. Had 272 against the Jets earlier this season for his season high. A completion percentage, and this is not a joke, only 48%. 8 touchdown passes, 12 interceptions, the 12 picks tied for the 4th most in the National Football League. Now, he has only been sacked 14 times, which is the 5th fewest in the league, or the 27 overall sacks that the Colts have given up, 5th fewest in the league, 14 times for Richardson, 13 times for veteran backup Joe Flacco, who is very, very stationary back there. But in talking about Richardson, understand, he's going to run a lot. That's what he does at 6'4", 255 pounds. Giants defenders told me this week, you have to treat him like a tight end. You don't treat him like a scrambling running back. That's how powerful and big his frame is. Now, ironically, the Colts do get a lot of takeaways because even with the interceptions that Richardson has thrown, they are only -2 in turnover ratio. The Giants are at -10. That has been a big bugaboo that has absolutely destroyed the Giants all season long. And we will see, again, Locke had 3 turnovers himself in last week's game against the Falcons. If he can clean that up and give the Giants a chance against this Colts team. Other players to watch on offense for the Colts, Downs with 59 catches for over 650 yards, averaging 11.5 yards a catch. He's caught 5 touchdown passes. Michael Pittman, the former USC wide receiver, has one 100-yard game himself. Downs also has one. Pittman, 54 catches for over 625 yards. Again, only 11.5 yards a catch and a couple of touchdowns. Those are the 2 leading receivers on the Colts offense. We just tried to tell you, they're going to run it a lot. Richardson will run it, and Taylor will run it. In fact, Taylor isn't even a big part of the passing game with only 15 catches this year for over 120 yards and only 1 score. They want to run, they want to run, and they want to run. And that makes a lot of sense because of Richardson's troubles throwing the football. They've got one dynamite defensive player along that defensive front. We're going to talk about him in just a minute. The fellow that we will not talk about in our 3 key matchups is Kwity Paye, who does lead the team with 7 sacks. We go to our 3 key matchups of the game for the Giants against the Colts. And the first one is going to be Jonathan Taylor against Darius Muasau, Giants inside linebacker. You know, you got McFadden with the stinger. You got Okereke on IR. So Muasau has started 3 straight games in 4 of the past 5. In those 3 straight starts, he's had 8 tackles, 6 tackles, and 11 tackles. Defensive coordinator Shane Bowen says he's very smart. He's very instinctive, very aggressive and energetic. Does a good job lining guys up, and they love his attitude. He has a tall order this week against one Jonathan Taylor. We're going to keep it on the same side of the ball for the Colts because it's going to be left guard Quentin Nelson, who in all 6 of his previous NFL seasons has gone to a Pro Bowl. He's as good as it gets, especially with the running game. He will be going up in all likelihood a lot of times against Giants defensive tackle Jordan Riley. Riley's been starting now for the last several weeks, been playing anywhere between 46 and 56% of the snaps. He is more of the Giants' run-stopping defensive tackle variety, and that's why it's important that he does a solid job against Nelson to give Muasau and relative newcomer Ty Summers, who came in off the street, basically a special teams guy, those guys are going to have to deal with Taylor. Now, Nelson this year, believe it or not, has actually been flagged for 10 penalties and been charged with 3 sacks allowed. It has not been one of his better seasons. He's had a lot of wear and tear. He's been beaten up a lot, and he may not quite be at the level that he has been in the past, but it's still Nelson against Riley that I'll be looking at in the run game because that's where Taylor's going to want to run the ball the most for this Colts offense. Our third key matchup to watch, well, this is what I was referring to earlier about the Colts defensive front. It's going to be defensive tackle DeForest Buckner. Yeah, the former 49er who's been with the Colts now for a handful of years. 5 different seasons he's been either to the Pro Bowl or been named All-Pro. He's been doing it for a long time, and he's just a terrific player. He's missed over a month of the season this year earlier because of a high ankle sprain. Doesn't seem to really have impacted him so much. Why do I say that? He's got 6.5 sacks in only 10 games this year. DeForest Buckner is a crafty, powerful defensive tackle who has done a number of things to offensive lines over his NFL career. Now, what do the Giants have to combat that? Well, we know that John Runyon's on injury reserve, the Giants' starting left guard. And that's a problem because Buckner is the starting right defensive tackle, which means for the second straight week, undrafted rookie free agent Jake Kubas is going to have to get the start. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to combine Kubas and Greg Van Roten, and I'll explain that in a minute, going against Quentin Nelson. Kubas, if you don't know his background by now, undrafted rookie free agent, had a terrific camp, forced the Giants to keep him on their 53 because he looks so good. 5 years at North Dakota State. Okay, that's an FCS school. They've got a history in recent years of producing really good linemen. Did not allow a sack during his final season in the program. Now, the only twist here is that the last 3 years, when he was a full-time starter, he played right guard. The Giants have a need at left guard, and that's where he played last week against Atlanta and held up as best as he could. So he's going to be the left guard. And now the center, well, it looks as though it's going to have to be Greg Van Roten. Now, Van Roten has started all season at the right guard for the Giants. He's a veteran in his 10th NFL year. He has practiced infinite amounts of times as the backup center wherever he's been, and he's been on a variety of teams, as you know. Well, this is his 10th NFL season, and he only has one career start at center. It was back in 2022 against the Miami Dolphins. In all likelihood, with John Michael Schmitz in a boot, we're looking at Greg Van Roten probably making his second career NFL start at center against the Colts and DeForest Buckner. Yes, he and Jake Kubas should have themselves a whale of an afternoon because that's quite a challenge. And you know that the Colts, again, not a heavy blitzing team. They're going to rely on their front four because they play a 4-3 to do whatever it is they need to do to be disruptive against a struggling Giants offense. Well, that'll do it for the three key matchups for the New York Giants as they take on the Indianapolis Colts on Sunday at 1 o'clock at MetLife Stadium. We'll be back on Monday morning with the game balls and gassers for the New York Giants for their offense, their defense, and their special teams. That's all for now. Don't forget, all of your New York Giants coverage can be found on the New York Giants on SI Media page. I'm Paul Dottino. We'll see you next time on the Big Blue Breakdown. So long, everybody.